Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for joining us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Dyslexia is a common learning disorder that affects a person's ability to read and write properly. The word dyslexia is derived from the Greek word dys, meaning difficult, and lexis, meaning words or language. Skills taken for granted, such as reading and writing fluently, is an area of challenge for those who have dyslexia. Persons with this difficulty might struggle with tasks that require hand-eye coordination. Dyslexia is very common, affecting millions of people around the world. Statistics from different sources put its prevalence anywhere between 5 and 20% of the global population. It is also estimated that boys are more likely to be diagnosed with dyslexia than girls. My guest is the MD, Dyslexia Nigeria, Dr. Adrienne Tikolo. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So why does a person have dyslexia? Has something gone wrong somewhere?
No, nothing has gone wrong. Dyslexia is inherited. It's a gene that you inherited from a parent or a grandparent. It's nothing wrong. Just like the color of your eyes or the texture of your hair. It's just a gene that has been inherited.
Okay, so you have mentioned one, how do we call it, risk factor, so to speak, which is it's inherited. Are there other things that tend to be common around people with dyslexia, other risk factors?
No, it's likely that it is inherited. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. Now, the degree to which you express difficulty with it or strength would then depend on, some of the interventions or support or the environment around you. But it's largely inherited. There's nothing you can do about that.
Okay, so when do you first notice, when can someone first notice that a child is dyslexic?
Well, before you can say a child is dyslexic, he must have had a diagnosis for dyslexia.
Okay.
And that you can do around about 4 years old. But before then, there will be signs that you would have been seeing. And some of the signs you see much earlier. Some children are, they have a delay with speech. So by the time they're about 1 to 2 years old, they're not making the sounds that we usually would expect.
No mama, no dada.
No. Or it's just slower. It takes longer than the average child that doesn't have dyslexia. So you find that first that, they might struggle with speech and developing vocabulary. But then once they get into school or they start learning their alphabets, then they have difficulty remembering the alphabet names, the alphabet sounds. They could also then have difficulty with rhyming. So they're not very good with the rhyming words, lake, cake, what's that rhyme? They might have difficulty with that. You might find that they might be ambidextrous. So today they're using the right hand, tomorrow they're using the left hand.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, yes, okay. But the thing is that, yes, it is. I mean, it is something good that you can use both hands, but again, it is a sign that there might be something. So those are the early signs that you see. They're not very interested in anything that has to do with books. They like you to read to them, but they don't want to read the books themselves. They're more like into gadgets. They can dismantle a toy or anything to do with their hands. So you usually would find that the child might have delayed speech and then have difficulty with his letters and the sounds. Those would be the early signs that you'd see.
Okay, so that suggests to me a problem with communication. But when this child grows up, is there still a problem with speech, like talking? Because in the beginning we said problems with writing and reading. Mm-hmm. So when the person grows up a little bit, has friends, is there a problem with socializing, talking?
Well, the thing is, dyslexia is a difficulty with language processing. You can have a strength, but difficulty. So language is speaking, it's written language, is oral language. And you find that some children, like I said, have delayed speech, but thereafter they may not have a problem with speech. But some continue to have problems with speech. They have what we call word-finding difficulties. So they want to say a word, but they can't quite remember the word. Or, that thing. And so sometimes that gets in the way of fluent conversations, and then they shy away from, conversations generally. But they're usually quite good verbally. They're usually quite good verbally as they grow older. You still find some that will struggle with speech, but usually the speech with dyslexia is when they're much younger, when they have delayed speech.
Okay, so 4 years old, it's not about the time they're in school, maybe nursery school or something. And that's when parents get reports that your child is refusing to speak, or he doesn't speak well, and the slaps and the knocks and all of that. So are teachers required to have education in this kind of thing, and psychologists, so that they're equipped with the skills to actually pick out these children?
I mean, this is what we advocate for. This is what we preach, that all teachers must have an understanding of specific learning differences. Dyslexia is very common, like you said, about 20% of any population. It means if you have a classroom of 25 children, about 5 of them are on that spectrum.
Yes, just a minute. On that 20%, what's with the wide range of percentage, 5 to 20? Why the disparity?
Well, the more we know about research into dyslexia and reading itself, the more we know how prevalent it is. So, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, the research thought it was about 10%. But now, more current research shows it's about 20% of the population. In fact, that research was done by the Yale Dyslexia Center, and they found it's 20% of any population.
20% is a lot.
It's a huge
That's
number.
1 in 5 people.
Absolutely.
That's every single room on the street.
Every single classroom.
Every single classroom.
Every single classroom.
Yet we're not really picking them out the way we ought to.
Because the teachers are not aware. The teachers are not trained to recognize dyslexia. The teachers are not trained to address dyslexia, and they don't know the strategies to intervene.
So somewhere, in fact, in many places, there are children with dyslexia who are coming back of the class and probably can do better.
Everywhere. Everywhere. Dyslexia is a difficulty. It has a strength, and I must keep saying it has strengths. But it's a difficulty with language, so reading, writing, spelling. This is what we do in school. Therefore, when you're having difficulty with reading, you're probably not going to be doing as well as you should, because a lot of what we do in school is reading. It's reading-based. You learn to read up until grade 3, where you need to read to learn. So if you're unable to make that switch, then it's going to begin to affect your academic work.
Okay, let's take this a bit further. So some parents feel that their dyslexic child isn't smart, or at least isn't as smart as other children. Is this true?
Absolutely not. Dyslexia has nothing to do, there's no correlation between dyslexia and intelligence. In fact, dyslexics have average to high intelligence. So they're actually smarter than most.
So that child in class who is having a problem writing her letters or his letters, having a problem reading from a book, is actually intelligent.
Yes, absolutely. And many times the teachers and the parents know this. In fact, this is what causes the worry. Because I know my child is smart. I know he's very good. He can articulate what he wants to say. He's very good with this. He's good with sports. He's good with that. But I don't know why he's having this difficulty when it comes to reading and spelling. And so sometimes that is the pointer for a lot of people, that there is a disparity between the child's level of intelligence and what he's able to do academically.
You say that for you to make a diagnosis of dyslexia, the child has to be examined.
Yes.
So how do you make a definitive diagnosis? What 2 or 3 things must you see, in the clinic or wherever, the office, to be sure that this is a dyslexic child?
Awesome. So dyslexia can only be diagnosed by a person that is specifically trained for it. And there are lots of psychometric tests that you use in carrying out that diagnosis. What you would find is in the areas that relate to dyslexia, reading, writing, spelling, comprehension, composition, working memory, they are operating below average, especially when you look at it in conjunction with the level of intelligence.
Okay.
So you find intelligence is this
level. The child is intelligent,
and yet he's below average here. He's probably more intelligent than most. I assessed the child like 2 weeks ago, and her level of intelligence is at 130. So standard scores, I mean, it's like 93%. And yet her level of reading is at 20%.
Oh, wow.
So you just see the disparity straight away. And so that's for someone that's really trained to see that. Some people would think, well, you know, she's all right. I mean, she's reading okay. But if you subject that to testing, you would find that it's way below average. And definitely when you look at it in relation to intelligence, it's even way lower.
Okay, so that brings me to something else. Do they find it difficult to do math?
All right, so not all dyslexics, because math difficulty is another area of difference. It's dyscalculia. But dyslexia and dyscalculia and some other learning differences occur together. They can co-occur. So you will find in a lot of cases, those that have dyslexia also struggle with math.
Then again, you know, math gets to a stage where you actually have to understand English.
Absolutely.
To get the math.
And then dyslexics also have difficulty with sequencing. So things in a sequence, which is why they have problems with alphabet.
Okay.
A, B, C, D in a sequence.
Okay.
But when you look at math as well, the operations sometimes are also in a sequence.
Like multiplication?
Yes, so it's add 2, take away 4, you know, divide by 1. It's that sequence. So you have to show you're working, you have to show it in that sequence, and they have a problem with the sequence. And so then they could have problems with math as well.
Okay, so you've been you've been very clear about the fact that dyslexia is not an illness.
No.
So we cannot be asking you if there's a cure.
No, you cannot.
But it's a...
But I do get the question all the time.
Yes. Okay, but there's something about this person's brain. Can you change it to be like everybody else? Is it possible?
No, but why do we want to be like everybody else? Because in nature,
get along, you know,
but in nature, we're all different. That's the beauty of nature, is the diversity in life. The thing is, dyslexics have strengths that are also more than the average than non-dyslexics. So problem solving, thinking outside the box, innovation, creativity. They have this in abundance. Why do I want to change that?
Okay,
so the idea is...
Let me ask it a bit differently.
Okay.
You have a class of people, and 40 people, maybe 8 of them are dyslexic, and they keep failing their exams. So how do you... That's why the change, you know, that's why I'm asking about this change. And you know, experts keep talking about inclusive education. Put them all in the same class. How do you do that when they're not performing up to par?
So it's the same thing we've been saying. We need to identify it early, and then we need to put support in place. That's all we need to do. If a child shows like he's having difficulty with dyslexia, can we just intervene with structural literacy? Can we make teaching more multisensory? And this works for all children. So what works for dyslexics is even better for all other children that are not dyslexic. What we need to do is get teachers trained. Teachers must be able to identify it and support dyslexics. And there's nothing wrong with a dyslexic child.
Okay, so you were using a lot of technical things there.
Okay.
Multisensory and all that. What's that?
All right, so multisensory means you must be able to activate more than one sense when you're teaching. That is sense of touch, sight, hearing. You put all of that together. So if I'm teaching a child, say, the letter A, I need to show the child a solid form of that A.
Okay.
Okay, that's visual.
Which is the correct way to teach?
Exactly. And then we need to make it auditory, so I can make like a song around it. All
right.
He can touch it because it's concrete. He can manipulate it, so it's kinesthetic. We can make a letter or a word out of the letters, and that will be tactile. So at the end of the day, I've activated several senses together, and that is what informs the brain to take on.
Latch on, sort of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's letters and sound association that it really struggles with as a dyslexic person.
All right.
So, multisensory
We
teaching.
have to go on a break. Imagine that. We're going on a short break. Please be with us on the other side. Welcome back. We're talking about dyslexia with Dr. Tikolu, and this is Health Matters on Channels Television. If you have questions about dyslexia, call 0808-054-2233. You can send a message on X @CTV_Mary A, or send me email, moalale channelstv.com while we continue with the conversation. So, Doctor, quickly, you use all these tactile methods and whatever, but does it make the child catch up with his mates in class?
Absolutely. That's one way that they learn, especially when it comes to reading. But there are other support that you need to give or accommodation in the classroom. For instance, if a child is struggling to copy notes from the board, can you just give him typed notes?
Okay.
You know, he doesn't need to spend all the time copying from the board when he can just begin to interact with the material.
All right.
You probably want to put him, you know, in the front of the class if he gets easily distracted so that all the others are not distracting him. So there are other accommodations that you can offer.
So that would mean that you're one of those who advocates that maybe not a child that age, but at some point that the child should have maybe like a computer that does text to speech and speech to text.
Absolutely.
It doesn't bother you that the child doesn't form the letters with his hand? You know, there's something about just writing.
Okay, so there are 2 or 3 things that we've put together there. Handwriting in itself is, it is a way that we communicate what we're trying to say in writing. And some people believe that, I mean, beautiful handwriting, I can judge you from the way your handwriting looks.
Exactly, you know?
So yes, I mean, I would say continue to offer handwriting support, but the bottom line is that some children will struggle with handwriting and writing quickly, and if that's the reason why they're not doing well in exams, because they're not finishing their exams, then can we have them use other means so that they can demonstrate what they know and not be held by the fact that, you know, they write slowly. So yes, continue with handwriting practice, but please give support when it's needed.
Okay, so you have mentioned that people have different types, you know, of dyslexia, comes different, or should I say different levels?
Yes.
Maybe some more than others.
Yes.
Do you have people who cannot be in the same class with those who are learn in a more regular manner?
All right. All dyslexics can learn in class. There's nothing that says they can't be in mainstream schools, especially when they have the right support. I do agree, though, that those that have severe dyslexia make up about 4% of the population. They would at least require a lot of one-to-one support and might not be able to cope with the pace in regular classrooms. So they might need one-to-one support for their reading and writing and literacy, but definitely nothing else.
Do you meet parents who are concerned about the cost of educating their dyslexic child?
Well, not particularly at this point in time, because a lot of the schools still do not recognize dyslexia.
So what do they do with those children?
So, well, they do a lot of things. Some of them, you know, try to give additional classes, but when you're putting the same wine in the same bottle, it's not going to make a difference. You need to do things differently, but they're not equipped to know what to do differently. So they're offering some support, but the support is not translating to, you know, improvement because they're not doing the right thing. It's like having, say, malaria, for instance, and then you're taking medicine for a cough. The malaria is not going to get better, but you're doing something, you're just not doing the right thing. So usually that's what happens when they don't know what to do. They know this child might need additional support, and then they think, okay, I need to get an external teacher, I need to get a teacher.
That one is just doing the same old thing.
Exactly, and so then we say the costs are high, but we're not doing the right thing. You see? But the thing is, when dyslexia remains unremediated for a long time, then it becomes resistant. So you need
have
additional resources.
For example.
Okay.
Let's even talk about a grown-up.
Okay.
He has never had his dyslexia addressed.
Lots of them.
What does he look like in life?
All right, he would have struggled in school. He'll remember all his school days with disdain. He would hate all his teachers probably. He's still struggling with reading and spelling. He's probably had to change jobs a few times because, you know, he didn't keep up with time. Of course, with adult dyslexia, you also have a lot of executive functioning, you know, problems. So he's having emotional difficulty. He doesn't manage his time well. He might have organizational difficulties.
Pause you there.
Okay.
We have OJ calling from Lokoja. Hello, OJ.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your question?
Oh, okay. I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I think about I've never made an exam before. But my major problem is my reading and writing.
Okay, you're breaking in there.
Hello?
Yes, your major problem is reading and writing. Go on.
And writing, yeah. I want to improve on it. I can't write. I miss spellings.
All right then.
I mix spellings, and then when I'm writing, I just miss up words also.
Okay. So
how do I work on my reading?
Thank you, OJ. The doctor will address that
already, but how do I improve on it?
Okay. He already knows he's dyslexic. He's been diagnosed, but he wants to improve his reading and writing. What's your advice?
Well, first it would be he would need additional, support.
And this is
literacy.
A grown-up. Oh.
Yes. You have resources and materials, that adults also use to improve on their literacy. The most important thing is to have a diagnostic assessment done.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, what they do is they just use like a checklist, which is the beginning, the first stage of identifying dyslexia. They say, oh, I'm showing this sign, I'm showing this sign, I'm showing this sign. Oh, yes, I must be dyslexic. And then they self-diagnose.
So what do you advise OJ to do now?
So OJ needs to, first, have you had a diagnostic assessment? So, because that tells us what particular areas you're actually struggling with.
Okay.
Sometimes he probably has some memory issues. And whatever he's learning, he's forgetting.
The writing
exactly.
Okay.
He's forgetting what he's learning with reading. But he would need structural literacy, particular type of literacy to address his reading problems. But there might be other things there as well. He says writing. He needs to learn the strategies to write. He needs to learn study skills. There's specific things to do for specific people.
Can he do these things himself, or must he have somebody helping him do them?
Well, now with technology, you can do a lot of them as as a software, because you have some of the intervention materials as software, which you can follow yourself as an adult. It would be good to have someone else intervene and work with him when he has, specific difficulties, specific areas. I don't know the other areas of difficulty, but the bottom line is
that what he has identified is reading and writing.
He's going to need additional tuition in those areas. So tuition that addresses strategies for writing. There's specific strategies that work for dyslexics, that help you remember, help you organize what you want to write, help you put them in a way that addresses what you're actually trying to say. So the different strategies, you teach those things, study skills, exam management, writing skills, and all of those things.
Okay, so Eze is calling from Agbo. Hello, Eze.
Yes.
What's your question?
Please, I want to know what this dyslexia that we're talking about. Has it any relationship with sluggishness, weakness, and because I know I've seen a child that, though very intelligent, she's always very weak and not smart.
Okay.
Has it any connection?
Any connection there?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's saying that, does dyslexia have any connection with sluggishness and weakness? That he knows somebody who is sluggish, weak, and not smart.
And not smart. I mean, like I said, we have different things that happen to us at different times. I know dyslexics are quite smart, but then dyslexia can also be not smart. So it's not, dyslexia doesn't affect intelligence.
Automatically follow.
Yes, exactly. And for someone to be sluggish, well, I wouldn't know why the person is sluggish, but I do know that if a person has struggled over time, they become demotivated. So they don't seem like they're eager, when it comes to things that have to do with reading or writing. They have all sorts of avoidance tactics,
Okay.
I want to sharpen my pencil, I need to go to the toilet, or they're taking their time to get there because they find it difficult to do. So it might really just be a sign of lack of motivation and a sign of difficulty in that
case,
area.
The person needs a psychologist to talk
will
to.
Need some sort of assessment.
Let me just go briefly back to OJ.
Okay.
He has expressed a desire to read better and write better. But what of somebody who couldn't care less? Can you help him bypass that and still make it in life?
I mean, reading isn't everything at the end of the day. And this is something that we all need to learn. Reading does not equate to intelligence. And there are lots of things that we can do without reading. I mean, I can be an awesome cook. Yes, there'll be some level of reading because I might need to read, some...
Yeah, but you can get the computer to say it to you.
Exactly. That's why we have text-to-speech software. Exactly, or speak-to-text. So reading isn't everything. You can do everything in life without, even when you have some difficulty with reading. Reading isn't everything. But when you're in school, and that's the way that we still operate school, reading, writing, and all of those things, then we want to make it better for you. But it has no bearing on how you eventually do become in life. It is how you find what you're good at, and how you focus on what you're good at, and playing to your strength, that is the sign of success.
So would you advise that OJ see a specialist and then, get a definitive, kind of like...
That's what I would
diagnosis
say. That's what I would say. Get a definitive diagnosis and someone that can then do an intervention out of that diagnosis, because we need to see what are the areas you're struggling with and then design an intervention that works for you.
For him in
particular.
Particularly.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to the show, Dr. Adrienne Tikolo. That has been a lot of education this morning. And I want to also thank OJ and Eze for your questions. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Have a wonderful day.